Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
That's one of them games that you always growed up dreaming of playing in. Being able to play in it is like a dream come true.
And that's why I come here playing games like this. And it's the Iron Bowl. I mean, it's always on the line.
We know that it is a big game. It's the biggest rivalry in college football, but at the same time, we don't want to psych ourselves out and overhype the situation.
The players may want to keep things even keel this week, but the fans, well, they're hyped up and we're hyped up. We don't have to keep it even keeled. Welcome into the Iron Bowl preview edition of Tider Insider TV, presented each and every week by Buffalo Rock. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVOA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. We got ice cold Pepsi tonight to drink because I tell you what, when the adrenaline's flowing like it is on Iron Bowl week, you got to have a little liquid refreshment. Listen to that sound. That sound sounds good, but let me tell you what, that taste is even better going down. Remember to pick up some great Pepsi products the next time you're at your local grocery store. Pepsi, a Southern original from Buffalo Rock. Well, last week, Rodney, was Mercer. We were a little bit even-keeled and laid back, but this week is Auburn. So we'll let Coach Saban kick us off talking about last week's game in this week's Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports Coach Talk.
Well, I don't think many people are interested in talking about the last game, but as I said afterwards, we played to a standard in the game, which is what we wanted our players to do. We wanted to play well for the seniors, which I think everybody responded to and did, and we got an opportunity to play a lot of players, and that will certainly help the development of those players and maybe add to their ability to play winning football on a consistent basis if needed in the future.
56-0 was the final of that game. Also, a lot of players got to win, got to play and play substantial minutes in that game, and that went over Mercer. But before we go full-fledged into the Auburn game, the Iron Bowl, let's talk about some takeaways from the Mercer game. Yes, Alabama was better, but we talked about it last Tuesday night, Rodney. This is the kind of game where you don't want to play around, and it went as scripted. The Tide scored practically every possession in the first half. Jalen Hurts and was able to get out of there. Tua Tagovailoa came in. Hurts threw 3 touchdown passes. Tagovailoa threw 3 touchdown passes. The offense rolled. The defense was dominant. J.K. Scott did his thing. The punt return game seemed to be a little bit better. Maybe there was the one misfielded punt by Marks, but all in all, it was the kind of effort you want from your football team leading into the biggest game of the year.
Yep. We said last week, Gary, the situation you really liked, the ideal situation was exactly that, to get guys in and out of the game very quickly, and that happened. You got to play a lot of guys, as you mentioned, but I think one of the keys, too, is that offensively, everyone was smooth. You mentioned Jalen Hurts was 7 of 7, I think, for what, 180, Gary,
yep.
something like that.
7 of 7,
had
183
really
touchdowns.
Big game. You see Josh Jacobs there, made some big plays in the game. So I thought all of that offensively was really good. On the defensive side, the one thing that really stood out to me was the opportunity to get Dylan Moses. A lot of reps there at that inside linebacker spot, Gary. And again, I understand it's Mercer, but I thought he played really, really well. He had double-digit tackles. What do you have, 11 tackles?
11 tackles, 4 for loss and an interception.
Yeah, I mean
what
a big
dominant
game. What a big game. So I think that certainly will help him confidence-wise as you start to move forward.
Yeah, for his first start, phenomenal effort by Dylan Moses. All right, so now let's move on to the Iron Bowl. Auburn is on a 4-game winning streak, and by beating Georgia 2 weeks ago, even with the 2 losses, one in conference to LSU and one non-conference to Clemson, they control their own destiny. It's phenomenal that you got Alabama unbeaten and Auburn with 2 losses, and they're playing for the same thing, a trip to Atlanta in the SEC championship game to represent the SEC West.
Gus has done a phenomenal job, in my opinion. His team has improved throughout the course of the year and is playing as well as probably anybody in the country right now. All you got to do is look at statistical information. They're, ranked very highly in offense. They're ranked very highly in defense.
Auburn is. They're ranked 3rd in the SEC in scoring offense, 3rd in scoring defense. Of course, Alabama's ahead of them in both of those categories. Here's what Auburn head coach Gus Malzahn said today in reference to his team being ready for the magnitude of Saturday's Iron Bowl.
The good thing for us is we're playing at home. We do have experience playing a #1 team 2 weeks ago when we played our best game, and we're going to have to do that again. And our crowd was unbelievable last time we did this, and I expect it to be the same. Our guys are looking forward to this game. They've worked extremely hard to get to this point. 4 or 5 weeks ago, there's not a whole lot of people I don't think would have thought we'd been in this position, and that's a tribute to our players and our staff of sticking together.
They have done a nice job, and again, been fortunate that you have been able to lose 2 games and still control your own destiny, but they do, and this is a dangerous football team. Clearly a quality team. Your analysis of what you've seen from Auburn this season?
Well, I think obviously over the last several weeks, Gary, they've been playing really, I call them a hot football team is really what they are. And again, they've improved a lot since the LSU game. They're running the ball really well with Kerryon Johnson. Jarrett Stidham's being very efficient in the passing game. I mean, he completes nearly 68% of his passes. Their offensive line is really performing well. The receivers are coming up big. And when you look at that defense, I mean, listen, they've done an outstanding job. They're great against the run. They really get after the quarterback up front. They've got 32 sacks on the year. So this is really a complete football team in a lot of ways, Gary. As you start to look at them. Now, the one thing that I would say, and when I just look at them and look at Auburn's offenses under Gus Malzahn, their best teams, Jarrett Stidham's a good athlete, but he's not really the running threat that maybe a Nick Marshall is. And I think that's the one thing when you look at the Auburn offense. If you can get after Stidham and you can get him on the ground, I think you've got a really good chance to shut them down.
Yeah, and arguably they have the best place kicker in the country as well in Daniel Carlson. Yeah, you mentioned Stidham, and he is a very accurate passer. Probably, as you said, not a great runner, although he is fairly athletic. But Kerryon Johnson, he gives them an opportunity when they want to get into the Wildcat and just direct snap the ball to him, and he's so good at picking his holes. As much as I respect Stidham and think he's a good player, if you let Kerryon Johnson get wound up and get going on you, here he is right here, you're going to have a long day.
Yeah,
They've got to slow him down.
He's just got little things that he does, Gary. You saw that stiff arm there when they had him in the backfield. It's things like that. He's got quick feet, makes people miss. He's strong. He's not really a big guy, but he does run with some power. I mean, he's just been on a roll. He leads the SEC in rushing, has over 1,100 yards. He's got, 16 touchdowns, I think, on the year. So, he's an outstanding player. Again, it's not just Stidham. It's certainly you have to stop the run first and foremost.
Yeah, they've got a lot of weapons, does Auburn, but so does Alabama. That's what makes this matchup so intriguing. And we'll continue to discuss Saturday's upcoming game, including the status of several Crimson Tide players trying to make their way back from injuries. And they might be able to do that. We don't know for sure, but could we see 47 on Saturday? Maybe 30? Possibility. And also, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. There's the information on your screen on how to get in touch with us. 205-348-WVUA is the number. That's 205-348-9882. Go ahead and call in now, or you can email us at TITV@WVUA23.com or tweet at us using that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this break. College football playoff rankings for this week. The top 10, all of the top 10 from last week were winners, so there are not a lot of changes, but you will see that Miami leapfrogged Clemson. Miami's number 2, Clemson 3, Oklahoma 4, Wisconsin and Auburn still 5 and 6. So the top 6 teams are the same, but Miami moves up a notch and jumps Clemson. So some interesting movement there in the playoffs and a lot of discussion about it. We know this. If Alabama keeps winning, they'll be the number 1 ranked team going into the college football playoffs if they win the next 2 weeks over Auburn and Georgia. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. I'm Gary Harris alongside Rodney Orr. Just a quick mention that Brian Daboll is a semifinalist for the Broyles Award, which goes to the top assistant coach in college football. And I like that. He deserves it. But what about Jeremy Pruitt with all those injuries? What does it take to be a semifinalist with that job he's done with the defense? Now, that's just one of many storylines as we enter the final regular season game. But one topic that has been a constant throughout the season for Alabama, injuries, Rodney. The Tide has been plagued with a number of starters out, including last week. And here's what Coach Saban had to say about the status of some of those rehabbing Crimson Tide players.
Minka will practice. Andy will be day-to-day. Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller are in the functional phase of rehab and not cleared medically to play. Mack Wilson has not practiced yet and has not been medically cleared to play.
So bottom line is if they're not medically cleared to play, it doesn't matter if Coach Saban wants to play them or not. They won't play. All right, Mr. Tider Insider. Coach Saban said he's never seen a year like this where injuries, particularly at one position, have hit so hard. Are you hearing anything about the possibility of some of those guys getting back on the field this week?
Well, I think there's certainly a lot of hope, Gary. And again, it's nothing official, but certainly there is a lot of hope. You'd love to have all three of those guys back on. We know that Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to play. That's one very positive thing. He's looked very good in practice.
That's today, by the way.
Yep, looks very good. So he's moving well. That's a plus, certainly. It would not surprise me if Christian Miller and Mack Wilson played. Not really sure about Terrell Lewis. Now, again, this is who knows. Coach Saban said they're not medically cleared. We won't know until maybe even tomorrow, maybe later than that. Might not know until game time, to be honest with you. But I would not be surprised to see 47 and maybe 30 out there. And you know what? I'd really love to see number 24 too, because I think he could make a big difference on the edge as a pass rusher.
What about on offense? Russ Piercebaker, the guard. Although J.C. Hassenauer is the SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week, so he's done a great job filling in. But what are you hearing on Piercebaker?
You know what, Gary? Again, that's another one of those deals that's day to day. I thought Coach Saban, just kind of reading between the lines in his comments Monday, I thought he felt pretty good about the chances of Ross Piercebaker getting back later this week. And again, we couldn't make practice today, or I couldn't, so I don't really know what happened in the media viewing period, which is very brief. But you know, I won't be surprised if Piercebaker gets back. But you mentioned it. Hassenauer did an outstanding job.
Yeah, he did. That is for sure. Well, we'll find out on Saturday. It would be a big emotional lift, if nothing else, to get some of those guys back. All right, still to come, the Alabama football team isn't the only big-time team that's ranked right now for the Tide. What about basketball? They're in the AP poll. We'll have an update from Avery Johnson on Crimson Tide Hoops. And up next, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information on your screen. That's how you can get in touch with us. Call now. Phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. We'll be back with your phone calls and more on this Iron Bowl preview edition of Tider Insider TV. Keep it tuned to WVUA 23.
If our name continues to show up in those polls, it's good for Alabama basketball, and it's good for the morale of our program.
You bet it is, Coach. Alabama ranked number 25 in the latest AP poll, the Crimson Tide's first top 25 ranking in the Avery Johnson era, so that's noteworthy. Bama beat Alabama A&M last Friday, and in that game, freshman John Petty set a Crimson Tide record for three-pointers made. He was 10 of 13 for 30 points. He lit it up. The Tide is 3-0 and will host UT Arlington tonight at 8 p.m. And this Texas Arlington team is a veteran team, and they're good. It'll be a tough challenge for the Tide. Highlights tonight at 10 on WVUA 23 News. All right, let's head to the phone line, sponsored by Daniel Moore's New Life Art. Let's take our first call on the New Life Art hotline from Sammy up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy, what's going on, man?
Hey, Gary and Rodney. First of all, just hope y'all have a good Thanksgiving, both you and your families and everything.
Thank you. Same to you.
And I want to make a comment on the offensive line. In fall camp, they usually determine who's going to be the starters, and they go with that. And that's why it's so hard for a guy like J.C. Hassenauer to get in there, because when they're substituted, they have most of the time beat somebody down, and they usually like to take a whole unit at a time. So it's kind of hard to break that lineup in there, you know.
You're right, Sammy, and Rodney. That's a very true statement he makes, and that's why it is so impressive for J.C. Hassenauer to step in the way he has. Now, having said that, he's a veteran guy. He's been around for a long time.
Yeah, he has. You know, when you're talking about competing for example, in this left guard spot. Now, I'll tell you, J.C. Hassenauer, he's versatile. He came here as a center out of Minnesota, and really played that position some in a few games early in his career, but now he's at the left guard spot, Gary. But he's a guy that is also a backup center still, so he's very valuable, a swing guy. You remember Alfred McCullough back in 2011, how valuable he was as a swing guy, and I think J.C. Hassenauer is a lot like that. And you know, Piercebaker started, what, 40 games
40
already?
games in a row until the Mercer game.
Yeah, he's a junior, so he started since his freshman year, so you know, he's done an outstanding job as well.
Yeah, you may have to have Hassenauer play on Saturday against Auburn. We just don't know. All right, thanks for the call, Sammy. Let's go to Trustful and talk with Steve. Steve, welcome into TITV. Steve, you with us?
Hello.
Hey, Steve, you're on the air, man. Go ahead.
Hey, this is Rick in Bluff Park.
Okay, Rick. Well, all right, Rick in Bluff Park.
All right, brother. Hey, I'd like to ask how you guys are up close and personal with the program. How much has Jalen Hurts matured over the course of the year? And also, I'd like to talk about Daron Payne. I think he needs to have his best game of the season.
Yeah, Rick. Yeah, absolutely. Jalen Hurts is. I'm going to say this. I think for a freshman last year, he was incredibly mature for his age. Then I do think he's matured even more. And I think one area that he's matured, I think emotionally he's always been pretty steady. I think he's matured in the passing game. I think we're starting to see him stand in the pocket more, go through his progressions, and hit more of those downfield passes, which is what we've been wanting to see from him.
Yeah. Well, and I think too this, Gary. Also, you know, he comes in as a true freshman. You know, he's in a difficult situation the last half of last season. They played some great competition, obviously. But I think with Brian Dable, you have a guy here as the offensive coordinator that does a really great job of developing the player. And I think that is the key. Maybe last year at the end of the year he missed some of that, Jalen Hurts did. But now you're starting to see him start to feel more comfortable in the pocket. He hangs in there more. We've seen some really nice throws down the field. So, again, I think that's attributed to Jalen Hurts, certainly, but also to Brian Dable.
And on Deron Payne, Rick, I'm with you. He's a terrific player. Auburn's interior line, though, particularly Braden Smith, are really good players, and they run a lot of inside zone read plays with Kerryon Johnson like we talked about. Deron Payne does need to come up big. That whole defensive front needs to come up big, but he is a potential difference maker.
You know, and some people say against LSU, maybe the Alabama defensive front didn't play like maybe we've seen them in the past. Maybe even Mississippi State, they got pushed around a little bit. I think this is a challenge because Auburn, you know, is one of the top rushing teams in the SEC. Alabama leads the SEC in rushing, but Auburn's certainly up there too. They're very strong running the football, Gary. And, you know, Kerryon Johnson's been on a roll like we've been talking about. So, again, I do think it's very, very important for the defensive front to kind of establish that line of scrimmage there.
All right, John, you stay on hold. We'll get to you. And coming up as well, the Alabama volleyball team is coming off a huge conference victory at home. We'll have the latest on the volleyball Tide. And more of your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the information there posted on your screen. John from Bessemer, you'll be first up, so you stay with us. And other folks out there, if you want to call in, 205-348-9882 is the number. We'll be back with more TITV right after this timeout. The Crimson Tide volleyball team is entering its final week of the regular season, and boy, they had a huge win on Sunday against LSU at home. The Tide dropped the first set before storming back to win the next three, and they secured the 4-set match victory. Now, Alabama's on the road at Mizzou tomorrow and then closes the regular season at home on Saturday against A&M. If they can win those two matches, postseason opportunities look promising. Good luck to the Tide. Well, welcome back to Tider Insider TV. Rodney Orr, Gary Harris with you. Let's go right back to the New Life Art Hotline, sponsored by Daniel Moore and talk with John in Bessemer, who's been holding. What's up, John?
What's going on, man?
Hey, man.
Hey, man, that game's going to be a close game. Nick Saban better have them boys ready, man. I know Auburn's going to be ready.
Yeah, both teams are going to be ready, John. Yeah, man.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you. Both teams are going to be ready. I mean, this is one of those. Both teams are going to be at an emotional peak. I think it could be important which team handles those emotions the best, and not to peak during the week, you know, on Thursday or Friday, and make sure you're ready to play the game at Saturday at 2:30 p.m. But I think both teams will be, you know, they'll give it all they got.
You know, Gus Malzahn said it's a big advantage to be playing at home. We know that. Certainly it is. And down there, I mean, we know what a snake pit that can be. And but you know what? I think he's got a job to do in terms of handling all the emotions that are surrounding that game, Gary, because like you said, sometimes you peak too early, sometimes you don't handle the emotions well, sometimes when you do that, you turn the ball over, you make mistakes. So, you know, I think that's something that can be an advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage.
Yeah, and a lot of speculation about Gus Malzahn's job status as far as Arkansas is concerned. We'll see how Auburn handles that. All right, let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with CB. CB, what's up, buddy?
Not much. How y'all, my friend?
Very well.
I tell you, this is Let's Go Bama week. Hey, they playing the Tide this week. Ain't playing Georgia, gentlemen. And I know they might have a couple of officials in their back pocket, and they playing down there in the den, but we just strap on them strength straps and go and kick that tail roll Tide.
Yeah, good news, CB, is Nick Saban at Alabama is 3-2 against Auburn in Iron Bowls played in Jordan-Hare Stadium. And 1 year, the loss came in 2007, his first season. The other was in the kick six. So Alabama actually won the last time they played down there 2 years ago. And they'll be ready to go, like we said. All right, let's stay here in Tuscaloosa and talk with Scott. Scott, welcome into the program. Scott, you there?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, what do you think about the new signing day on December 20th and how it affects the college teams going into bowl season?
All right, Scott, I don't like it myself, but it's a rule. Rodney, what do you think about it and how it affects teams in recruiting?
Well, and I think that's something that we're going to have to evaluate as time goes on because this is a new thing. I'll say this, you know, when you're trying to prepare your team for the SEC championship game, you've got 2 weeks later, you've got the signing period coming up. You've got, if you win that game, you're going to the playoffs. You've got so many different things going on. I think it's really a little bit, it's asking a lot of these coaches.
I don't like it at all, but we'll see how it works out this year. All right, thanks for the phone calls. We're going to take a time out. We'll be back with more TITV right after this. Welcome back to Tider Insider TV. We make picks all year. We're both 11-0 because we picked 11 Alabama games, picked them to win every time. This one looks to be a little tougher. The Iron Bowl, Alabama at Auburn. What do you got?
Well, I mean, you know, if you listen to everyone out there, Gary, it's almost unanimous Auburn, it seems like. It's really turned, this game has. A few weeks ago, if you'd have polled 10 people, I bet 80% would have told you Alabama. Now it's really kind of starting to weigh in Auburn's favor. And you know what? I think that's good. I think Nick Saban will use that as motivation. I think it's a little bit disrespectful to this Alabama team being the #1 team in the country. With that said, this is an outstanding Auburn football team. There's no question about that. It's difficult to beat them at Jordan-Hare, but I think Alabama does 28-20.
Well, Rodney, I'm with you. I think Auburn is a very good football team, but it's not lost on me that Auburn has lost 2 games. I know Clemson's really good. I know LSU can be tough down there in Baton Rouge, but still, this Auburn team's lost twice. Alabama's undefeated for a reason. Alabama's the #1 ranked team in the country. They got a chance to win 4 in a row over Auburn for the first time since Coach Bryant was winning 9 in a row against the Tigers, 70s into the early 80s. I think they get it done, and I think they get it done by double digits. I've got it 33-23. I do think Daniel Carlson's going to kick 3 field goals for Auburn, but I think Alabama, the offense steps up, the defense make plays when it has to, and Bama gets the victory. We'll find out on Saturday. Our beautiful shirts and ties provided, as always, by the Locker Room in downtown Tuscaloosa, home of the original elephant wear. Get by and see them in person or shop online at locker-room.biz. Also, it's dinner time. Tonight is the 3rd Tuesday. We're headed to Buddy's Ribbon Steak in Northport. Come by and join us. We're going to chow down about 7:15. See you then. Have a good night, everybody.